Excellent. Okay, go ahead, Jack. Sorry.
Well, I am going to use names. Nobody's going to be embarrassed. The first two speakers were Kim and Lisa, and both of them said that what we've heard before, that Abdu'l-Baha was more accessible. It was easier to relate to Abdu'l-Baha, and it was harder to jump to Sri Aurobindo.
Mhm.
Kim also observed that, and I think it's quite true, in the stages of the soul, we can find ourselves having different parts of different stages, not of course the higher stages, but perhaps in the lower soul, we may find that, yeah, we're a self-blaming soul, but oh, I do have some of the attributes at the higher level nonetheless. So maybe I'm not stuck, you know, in the lower level. But Kim quoted that line from Abdu'l-Baha's tablet, "I will not swear by the self-blaming soul," depending on how it's translated. So I guess we have to get out of that self-blame eventually. Ingrid was the star pupil here who made the most the most connections. I think you should talk to Ingrid, Mark.
Okay, that's great.
As Sri Aurobindo talks about mind, supermind, overmind, intuitive mind, illumined mind, higher mind, and so on. And she found quite a few overlaps. So she was quite successful in finding a few correlations. David Oak asked a very good question. How does it feel to be in a certain stage of spiritual development? What would such a person appear to be concretely rather than theoretically? What, what does that feeling feel like? And could we be sure we could recognize such a person? Now, this may be my idea, but not David's, but it seemed to be coming up that the 7 valleys and the 4 valleys, the states they describe, might better relate to Sri Aurobindo than the stages of the soul. That's for your judgment to decide, Mark. Now, Alan was talking about, he's been studying mental models, and he said that the soul has been created for a purpose and an end, and what's good about, his study of Sri Aurobindo was that we must strive to move to different states. Alan was think that the experiences are real, and these experiences belong in states. He's more interested in the states, the description of the states, that than in the stages or the steps. And he felt that Sri Aurobindo described people in different boxes, so to speak. All his different stages, for example, of the mind. He was kind of doing a taxonomy of what people in different stages of development look like, whereas Abdu'l-Baha describes this process from the inside out, so to speak, what it feels like as a person to be going up the arc of ascent. So that Abdu'l-Baha was speaking more from a subjective, even though he also did taxonomy. In a way, he was speaking from a more subjective than an objective point of view. Eva said she's more experiential. What she's more interested in is how do we achieve these things rather than what they are. How do we get there? She felt in that sense, Abdu'l-Baha is more doable, if you like, or the Baha'i writings are more doable than Sri Aurobindo. But I don't know, maybe that wasn't his purpose in the particular course that you taught, because he did practiced yoga for umpteen years. And Lori didn't, maybe she can just share her thoughts now a little bit, Mark, because she didn't get a chance to speak.
That'd be great.
Oh, well, I was on the Wilmette site today, and I was very delighted to see this because it's exactly what Mark has set out to do in his courses. And I'm not sure if it's run under the Wilmette Institute or whether it's a separate thing. If I could just read this, well, rather long paragraph, but the group is called Theology Without Walls. Often theology is defined as the articulation of the beliefs about the divine reality within one's tradition. In light of the widespread experience of finding spiritual insight in other traditions as well, that definition seems inappropriately limited. Surely the aim of theology should be to learn all we can about ultimate reality, regardless of the source of the insights. Even comparative theology, when it is regarded as finally confessional, limited to asking what light other traditions throw on my own, stops short. What is needed is a theology without walls, without confessional boundaries, without binders, as it were. That does not mean that we do not stand somewhere, but our sense of our goal is not limited to where we stand at the outset. So I found that Marcus set us out on being sort of working, the working way, the way that this theology without walls is going. And for me, it was just general. For me, it made me think about the development of the soul. It made me think about the soul. I was certainly surprised that Sri Aurobindo, without having access to Abdu'l-Baha's writings, and without, I guess, perhaps, as we know, divine inspiration, although probably there was divine inspiration, he came up with things in the same sort of way for me. And Sri Aurobindo's was more like a user's guide for me to sort of explain that. So thank you, Mark, for doing this course. I feel it's scholars that are supposed to join this theology without walls. Yeah. And yeah, and it really helps me as well too to think what we're here in life, because when we're in the womb, we're developing arms and legs. And here I knew I was supposed to be developing something, but I needed a better description of what it was, how to recognize it, and also what the next sort of stages or states are in the next world. Because in my mind, those people are all up there having a tea party, and perhaps that's not the case. Thank you.
Delightful. Thank you very much. Okay, so Durham, how about you?
Well, I made sure what you wanted, that everyone will say something, and
Fantastic.
everybody said something. That's
Excellent.
number one. And we were surprised when Harold popped out,
Yeah.
and I couldn't say anything anymore. but very interesting. I mean, I took notes, and I don't want to mention who said what. I just, because you are interested in the ideas and the reflection. So first person mentioned it's a journey, until perfection. Low physical energy, and then in consciousness and so on. That's one way. Another one mentioned the steps, the pyramid that Aurobindo used, helped in understanding some of this stuff.
Mhm.
Very challenging, very challenging, difficult words. It wasn't easy to connect, like to find the language, you know. One interesting thing is that a person comes from Western, become Baha'i, and then he's exposed to Eastern and Western concept, and he try to connect or define himself or herself, you know, within these two cultures, you know, which I found very interesting, you know. The chart again, someone found very helpful, the pyramid of Oribundo. So helpful to look at the journey of the soul, but by different service, by different sources. And this was very interesting that, well, it's good to look at it from different religious background, not only Baha'i stuff. That was interesting. One person mentioned is that we don't have enough information about Islam to understand, which is the religion where the Baha'i faith grew up. And that's very helpful, especially in this course of the Surah of Rum, you know. It's all about Islam. So if you don't know what's Islam, you need to take a course of Islam, and it will help. But there are so many really courses about that. Our being made of energy. That was very interesting. How Sri Aurobindo arrived to this and concept that we are made of energy, you know. I found that also interesting, how he arrived to this, that we are energy, and what does it mean, you know? Then another interesting way of difference of quality. Sri Aurobindo is considered like an artist, scientist, you know, versus Abdul Baha, who's a compassionate counselor. That's interesting way of comparing the two, you know. Like, you know, I used the envelopes that came today in the mail to write my notes. I didn't have any paper, so. And one of them is Bill from the city of Ottawa, so I have to, I don't like it. Okay. Okay. Says, I have no concern about the differences or similarity between the two. I am interested in the commonality, okay? This individual thinks that, you know, lot of wasted human potentiality. That's another thing by doing this kind of thing. But the important part is both speak about unity. Unity with the universe and not just one or two people, you know, and that's an interesting point. Like, again, details doesn't interest some people, the details of, you know, like what we are looking at. All of them said, appreciate Mark's work. Don't worry, okay? Everybody, really.
Right.
They all appreciated your work, and I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. Someone said, I love going through subjects related to soul. And this course was really opening, you know, my mind. Although it was challenging to understand everything from Aurobindo, but still, this individual found it interesting, you know. Yeah, especially that we are looking at the soul from another source, not a Baha'i thing. That's interesting. And I think that's all I have. I'm sorry if I missed one of you guys, but it's all because of these envelopes. Sorry. But thank you very much. Thank you. It was a good exercise.
Okay. Ooh,
So Mark, do you see the hands up?
I do. Well, one or two. Yes.
Ingrid and then Joey
And I see Bill too.
and Bill.
Okay, let's go with Ingrid then.
Yeah, I told the other group you can't see me because my camera's conked out. So otherwise I would definitely
Okay.
show my face. Um, when Derham mentioned this, Sri Aurobindo talked about humans being energy beings. I just wanted to say, I mean, in quantum physics, we know that energy is thought of as being both waves and particles.
Right.
And in terms of, for eons, the Chinese have found the acupuncture meridians. It's like the waves of energy running through the human body.
Yep.
And actually it's the Hindu tradition where we have what would be like particles of energy, these energy nodes called chakras, and they're just foundational. Chakras have names that come from the Sanskrit, and they come from the Hindu tradition. So, Sri Aurobindo obviously knew about this Hindu tradition. He probably knew about the Chinese philosophies as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I toyed with the idea of bringing in the chakras in his understanding, but I decided that it was a little bit too much detail
Yeah,
for this
yeah.
particular course. But he certainly is alive to that. Yeah. Okay, who is the next person, Linda?
Joey and then Bill.
Okay.
When we were talking in our group, people were talking about pathways. And I suddenly realized, this is a bit off topic, but years and years ago, I remember a fellow who started with Ken Wilber and tried to get people to understand the similarities of Ken Wilber and the Baha'i faith. And then we went on and we looked at the Seven Valleys. And then we went on and we looked at Islam. And then we went on and we looked at the Quran. And I thought, and now we're here. And next session, we're going to end with Ken Wilber. And I thought, oh, we're being taken on a journey, the same as we're looking at right now. So just an interesting observation.
And I'll make sure that it's not just a repeat of what we've heard in the 2 or 3 occasions I've talked about Wilbur. I've got some a different angle on him, so stay tuned.
No, it's just, and you've done it very gently, surreptitiously, taking me on this path.
It was the primal will, Joey. Remember the primal will. Oh my goodness.
Well, I don't think I ever really got an answer to that. Or that I believed the answer.
Was
Okay.
that guy's name Mark Keedwell by any chance?
Yeah.
I've been doing this a while. I documented the courses that I've done recently. Oh my God, it fills a page. It's about 20 of them. Anyway, Bill, what do you got to say?
I just wanted to clarify that because I was the one that mentioned the wasted human potentiality. That this is not, that the wasted human potentiality is the inverse of what you've shown as the human potentiality that is illumined by both Aurobindo and Abdul Baha. So when you look at where we can be and what we can become spiritually and psychically, if you inverse that, you see wasted human potentiality.
I see what you're saying.
And so, because I didn't want you to have the impression that I thought this was a waste of time or anything like that.
Yeah,
Or
no,
anything
that's
like
good
that.
clarification. I didn't think that, but yeah, it's good that you mentioned it. Any other thought though, Bill, that you wanted to mention at this point?
Well, I am glad Bill clarified that because that's the way I took the remark.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Any other thought though,
Harold,
Bill?
I think.
Well, I think often I'm misunderstood probably because of my inability to articulate these things well. But I think when you look at this wasted human potentiality, you see what the potential is to take something like what you're presenting and bring it to the world so that people can see the waste. And that, I think, is a motivation towards pursuing a better use of who we are as individuals and what our lives are about and what they're for. So I think that both these parties, Abdu'l-Baha and Aurobindo, were showing us that at the end it was all about becoming unified with the universe, and closer to the spiritual or psychic energy that is the universe, and that in the process we become unified with each other. In that, if we are all pursuing this individual unity as individuals with the universe, this brings us to the unity of humanity that we need in order to essentially become what humanity has the potential to become. And this is what the Baha'i faith seems to be saying. And I'm not sure if Aurobindo was that tuned in as Abdu'l-Baha, but it seems like if people like you who are doing what you're doing find more and better ways to get this information out there, it can relieve the suffering that comes from wasted human potential and the consequences of that.
It's such a crying shame when you look at the world from a perspective of Aurobindo, for instance, and you see what people could be doing with their time and what they actually are doing. You just think, oh, where do you start? And I could easily have done another course on Aurobindo, specifically on the question that I think Eva raised about how we get there. So the dynamic forms of yoga, what is it that he was actually suggesting we do in order to move from where we are up the chain? But I had to decide which way to go. So Harold, you had your hand up a moment ago.
And
Oh,
then,
yeah.
And sorry, Linda?
then Jack's.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Harold.
Oh, I was the one that mentioned the distinction between, say, the artist scientist who's trying to refine and broadly theorize, and the opposite of that, not opposite but different, is the human soul trying to struggle in a moral spiritual drama every day. And from the point of view of the artist scientist, Aurobindo and Abdu'l-Baha's categories, to me, completely correlate. It's possible for me to line them up together. But from the point of view of the struggling soul, I realize I'm more at home in looking at Abdu'l-Baha's descriptions. And I hang around between the rational human soul to the assured soul, with plenty of the commanding soul, the blaming soul, the inspired soul. I only make little bits of forays into the assured soul and then digress. Okay, so that's not very high. But my mystery is this: why have I not gotten as far as I think I understand? I can describe. In other words, if someone walked up to me on the street and said, tell me about Abdu'l-Baha's stages of the soul, I could go right up to the top. I could describe it to him, but I haven't been there.
Mm-hmm.
So this is very strange to me. How do I think, what makes me think I understand stages that are higher than what I've actually achieved? It feels like I understand them to a degree. The words make some sense to me. Also, when I meet someone who's ahead of me, quote unquote, in the moral spiritual sense, I recognize it. I say, this soul is more advanced. I want to have a breakthrough that will get me to their level. The same thing when I meet someone who's more advanced in the artistic scientific way. That is, they know more than I do, and they can explain more. I see that immediately, and then I try to learn from them. Oh, so I'm describing a dilemma. I think somewhere in here, Abdu'l-Baha says you can't really understand the higher, what's higher than you are. I feel like I do because of this course. I feel like I'm getting glimpses of what's higher than me. But I haven't been there, but I feel like I understand those dynamics to some extent. I admire them. I see them out in the world. Anyway, I'm just struggling here. So, but I'm especially taken by the moral drama of Abdu'l-Baha's stages. It strikes me that there's a tremendous moral drama going on there. Can you let go and allow help from higher realms? Can you do that? Can you shrink your ego enough to do that? Can you do that? Can you open up and admit that you don't have all the answers? Can you pray? Can you actually receive help when it comes? These are, to me, powerful, like moral drama, spiritual drama questions. And I didn't pick up that stuff in Aurobindo. It's almost like a cool, detached description of higher levels of consciousness and reality. Not that it doesn't take a lot of work, but it's sort of, I don't pick up the drama part of it, of letting the higher divine levels come into you and assist you and enlighten you and shake you up. Anyway, so that's what I'm aware of, to having re-struggled. You know, I must have read this about 7 or 8 times, the stages of the soul. And each time the moral drama of it hit me stronger. You know, he's like a very advanced spiritual coach who's describing, you know, where you've come, where you are now, and where you have yet to go.
Well, I have to say though, Harold, that the sense that you have that Aurobindo is detached and a coach is partly my fault because of the selections that I've made in order to make this course manageable.
But everybody else treats him that way too. I mean, I've read a bunch of sources on Aurobindo. They all do it that way.
But you haven't read his letters on yoga, for instance.
Oh, I see. Okay. Then it would sound different. It would sound more like a struggle. Yeah. Okay.
And we haven't read any of the mother, for instance, and she was extremely down to earth and could relate to people even at the age of 3 years old, and could take these huge ideas and make them palatable to young children. So there's a great deal there that I did not have time. I literally just had to decide not to present it. So I wouldn't rush to judgment on him that way. It's my fault for the selection I made. Jack, what do you think?
Well, I was inspired by what Bill and Harold said. You know, Bill was talking about being united with the universe, and this reminds me of the way people don't talk about God now. People are so afraid of the word God because it's so loaded or so suggestive of different things that they don't use the word God much anymore, but they will talk about the universe.
Mm-hmm.
The universe decided this and the universe decided that. Well, look, there's two different, what's coming up there in Harold's comments is the Hindu view, which I think, Mark, is at one level, unless you go into bhakti, devotional. the devotional path, which is the warm, emotive, loving, emotional path,
Yep.
devotion to Krishna or whomever, it does tend to be kind of cool and taxonic, if that's the right word.
Taxonomic?
Taxonomic, I guess.
Taxonomic.
And to me, it's a big difference. Is the universe, and this is somewhat the difference between, in a way, Hinduism to some extent, except for Bhakti, and the Abrahamic faiths, is that the Western faiths are very personal. I mean, I'm generalizing here, okay? I am generalizing, but you know, I think in Hinduism, they tend to take a more detached, impersonal view of the universe. So I did read some of the letters of yoga, not all 3 volumes, but I relate to what Harold said about that emotional drama, and Mark, you've said that does come up in the letters of yoga, but I think it's important if we talk about God or the universe, we have to be careful which one we're talking about, because if we talk about the universe as a substitute for God, well, the universe doesn't have a will of its own. So when not in the normal definition of the universe, and this is why when people talk about the universe, we don't normally think of the universe as having a will, but we think of God above all as having, you know, a will. I mean, that's one of the names of the Baha'i feast is Mashiach and so on and so forth. So for me, these are important distinctions. And so I think to some extent, based, Mark, on the material you presented us, we have somewhat of a more impersonal viewpoint than what Abdul Baha points to in the stages of the soul, which is a lot more, if you like, dramatic. There's the spiritual drama of the struggle and you know, the rise and fall and all of that. So anyway, that's what Harold and Bill inspired me with.
Well, we've reached our time limit here. I have 2 or 3 pages of reflections on the comparison that arose as I actually read Abdul Baha again in the light of Aurobindo. So what I'm going to do is I'll send that to you tomorrow as a document, and feel free to read it if you'd like. If not, just take a break.
But can you summarize it now?
Well,
Before we go home,
I
you're
was
not going to
gonna-
leave us dangling like that, are you? Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, I mentioned before we had the breakout rooms that our comparative effort faced several difficulties. The last of these was the approach taken to spiritual psychology appears to differ between them. So here's how I've come to summarize their seemingly divergent approaches. So in Abdul Baha's case, the level of the soul reflects the degree to which one has recognized, accepted, and allowed God's presence to permeate one's life. In Aurobindo's case, it's the extent to which one's mind, life, and body have been transformed by the presence of the descending supermind, the depth and breadth of the divine mind one has integrated. So that's at the end of my notes here. Some of them are picayune, but I've asked 3 questions. So for instance, one of them I'll mention to you right now. So you remember at the end of the 7 valleys, Baha'u'llah mentions that it's that there are further stages of the heart that he would be willing to share with somebody if there was an audience capable of understanding what he was talking about. And so one of the things I noticed is that Fana seems to be equivalent to the accepted soul. So does that mean that the higher levels beyond the accepted soul may actually be those stages of the heart that Baha'u'llah is talking about? There aren't 4 of them, but there are 3. So that's the kind of question I was open-ended kinds of questions. So I'll share that with you tomorrow and see what you think of it. And if you want to send me any feedback, that'd be great.
Well,
So
Mark,
that,
I wanted to say to you personally, and I'm sure I speak for everybody, I think I've taken all of your courses over the years, or maybe.
you sure have.
And if there were a master teacher award to be given out in the Baha'i community, you would surely deserve that one. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh boy. Well, I'm going to take a bit of a break. For some reason, I'm tired. I am already planning what I'm going to do in part 3. How is Buddhism going to fit in, and what are we going to talk about with Wilbur? So I'm not certain when we'll start yet. It'll probably be late October or early November. And so we'll probably have about the same number of classes as we did this time around, if you're interested. But
Thank you,
Mark.
I think you'll find it's easier.
Yay.
Easier, yay.
Well, I suggest when the pandemic is all over, we take Mark and Linda out for a banquet.
Oh,
That'd be
Everybody
great.
in
We'll
Abbotsford.
just fly home.
Abbotsford. On the island.
The far west.
I think we'll go near Butchard's Gardens. There must be a
Yeah.
lovely place.
That's a good idea. Excellent.
Thank
Maybe
you,
Well,
then I'll
Mark.
understand the primal will.
Oh, the primal will, that was the most fun.
we're still circling around that one, Joey. We'll bring it up again. Oh, I see Eva's in darkness now. It must be getting dark out there. Anyway, okay. Take care,
Thank you,
everybody.
Mark.
everybody.
Thank you,
Mark.
Linda.
See you
Thanks so
again
much.
soon.
Thank
Bye.
you so much.
Thank you.
Stay well,
Bye.
everybody. Have a good
Love you
summer.
everyone.
all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.